Today's video is going to be a fun one because we're going over the very worst commander designs of all time.
I'm Mia, and I love not going outside.
I'm BZ. I love staying indoors and sleeping in. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. Free shipping on their orders over $50. So what I'm thinking this means is that you use our link so they can see that we sent you and they can say, hey, this is a great sponsorship. We're going to keep doing this. But you also save on shipping and stress of just having 1,000 packages that you need to track, and they're all coming in 17 business days, and you don't know when any of them is coming, and 3 of them are going to be wrong. Card Kingdom, forget all that. It's just perfect.
You can buy cards there. You can sell cards there. You can just do it all, and we love them. And so if you use our link in the description below, it'll help the channel a bit. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you can save 5% of your real money tax dollars on your entire order.
And there's a mox field somewhere in the video, and you're not going to be able to guess where it is. If you guessed it correctly, that just means you cheated. So we also have to shout out our friend Alper because he did an interview with Quentin Gleam, one of the new generations of magic artists. And if you watch the interview, you can figure out what vampire secret lair he'd like to work on and how he won a national contest without realizing that Scientology was involved.
That's super weird, but so cool. Go check it out. But today we're going to be talking about the worst commander designs of all time. But we're going to have to define what makes for a bad commander design. There's a few things that can fall into this. That's going against the fundamental rules of commander, being almost entirely useless everywhere, or just being disappointing in general. I feel like there are a lot of commanders that can fall into this because there's just been a lot of commanders ever made, and so we're just going to get into it.
Yeah, our commanders are all going to fall under those categories, and I do want to say that we are not picking on or advocating for bullying anyone who's ever designed these cards. I have no beef with them. They've only ever been trying to make Magic a better game, and they've been succeeding 99% of the time, but we are just going to talk about some of the worst designed commanders. And we're going to start with a banger. It's Yuriko, the Tiger's Shadow, 1 blue-black for a 1/3. It's got Commander Ninjutsu for blue and a black, which means you pay blue-black and return an unblocked attacker you control to hand. Put this card onto the battlefield from your hand or the command zone, tapped and attacking. And whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, you flip the top card and everybody loses life equal to its mana value. Then it goes into your hand. The big glaring mistake with this card is the Commander Ninjutsu, not regular ninjutsu. The problem with ninjas is that they haven't really been able to work from the command zone, and it's a little disappointing. So they tried to fix it, but what they didn't do was give Commander Ninjutsu any sort of taxing, and it doesn't scale with the game. It is only ever blue-black.
No matter what little creature that the Yuriko players puts down, if it goes unblocked, Yuriko's going to come down for 2 mana. That doesn't feel good as a play pattern because of that lack of tax. And so sometimes you're just going to have to use your Path or Swords on that 1 mana flyer or unblockable creature turn 1, and that never feels good.
Yeah, you know, it also kind of feels like a little sour taste in people's mouths where they're like, well, your commander just is never taxed. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. And then they just hit you. And the problem also with Yuriko is like, how do you even build a lower powered Yuriko deck? Obviously, Yuriko is like, hey, play unblockable creatures. They're all 1 mana. They're flying and they're unblockable, whatever else, like Ginger Root. And then it says also, you know, play high mana value spells. Even let's go, you know, lower powered ones like Decree of Pain or Dusk Mangler. Yuriko still comes down, never stops, hits you. All the ninjas hit you. You just trigger it a million times, and then your opponents take like 15.
I feel like the only difference between a high-powered and a low-powered Yuriko deck is like free spells and extra turn spells, and then also just whether you combo with Thoracle Consultation or not.
Yeah, but like the core of the deck stays the same, and that's definitely not very enjoyable, especially when you have to play against it over and over. You get real sick of it really quick. This next one is also specifically designed for Commander, a pre-con Commander actually. This is Ob Nixilis of the Black Oath, 3 black for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker +2. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. -2, make a 5/5 demon with flying, and you lose 2 life. -8, you get an emblem with 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature. You gain X, and you draw X, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So the ultimate is pretty cool. I like having an emblem that requires mana. That's kind of an interesting take on it, and it's really powerful. How are we supposed to get there? The +2 is an extort trigger. It's deal 1 to each opponent, gain 3.
It's so sad because the idea of paying mana into this plus or this -8 ability that says that's just so hard to get to begin with because he starts at 3. It's like a 5-turn clock for him to stay out, not take any damage to get that. And then I also have to pay mana into it when his plus is just a poor impression of like an extort trigger. When Blindo can come down and then I could get extort triggers for multiple turns while paying a lot less than what Obnixilis comes down for in general, and I just get 1 trigger. This is just a really sad excuse of a card when the rest of the commanders either were okay in this cycle or just slap.
Yeah, Nahiri had a very cool little equipment thing going on. There wasn't much of that back then. Duretti is one of the most powerful commander planeswalkers you have with artifact sacrificing. Teferi's got combos and he just untaps for a lot of mana, or you can draw cards. And then Freyalise is a sick elf ball commander. And then we have Obnixilis over here just like messing around in the corner, +2ing, extorting people, and they're like, Obnixilis, this is not good. And he's like, wow, well, just wait till I -2 to make a 5/5. And of course, I'm going to lose 2 life because I can't just make a 5/5. The card is just complete dog water. You start at 3 plus to 5, then you go to 7, then you go to 9, then you go to ultimate range. So you need to keep this out for 4 turns to ultimate. It doesn't protect itself if you're plussing it. But if you minus it, on the other hand, you now have a 5/5 that lost you 2 life with a 1 loyalty planeswalker who's now never going to ult. And I just don't know what you're ever going to get out of this card. Like, kind of a joke.
And the fact that you're in black, so it's not like you're going to have counter spells if people target it or something. You'll have Imp's Mischief at best. So it's not like you have a ton of instants to protect this. So unless you have a ton of creatures, this thing isn't staying out for very long.
And you know what? You actually sold me a little bit earlier. I'm now mad at the ultimate because while it is cool to put mana into an emblem, that would actually make me think that the emblem is now worse, so let's make it easier to get. It's hard to get, and you still have to pay mana. Actually, Obnixilis insulting in every way.
Next is a card where the amount of mana you have to put into this card for nothing to happen and then just have a very paltry little effect later is very sad. It's Akeem, the Soaring Wind, 2 red, white, and blue for a 3/4 flyer. Whenever you create 1 or more tokens for the first time each turn, you create a 1/1 bird with flying. If you pay 3 blue, red, and white, creature tokens you control gain double strike until end of turn. Not even all creatures, creature tokens.
This card is a 5 mana investment, which then, if you can make a token the same turn, creates 1/1 bird with flying. Now, the onus is on you to figure out, since it's restricted to once per turn, how you can get tokens on other people's turns, which will then give you a maximum of 4 tokens in a turn cycle. Now you can pay 6 mana to give those bird tokens you made that are 1/1s double strike. What is happening?
That's such a bad rate. And you could play cards like Smothering Titan here to give to get treasures on everyone's turns. Okay, that's a good card, but am I getting a bird out of it once per turn? So when the turn cycle gets back to me, I have 4 birds maximum at that point. And then I could pay 6 mana to give them double strike? I'd rather be using those treasures for other things or have a different commander at the helm where I can utilize these tokens a lot more and not just get, 8 damage maximum if I pay 6 mana into it.
Yeah, I'm sorry to the 486 Akeem players out there. That's the actual number. But you got screwed on this one. Here's the problem. If I could shave 2 mana off the mana value of this, making it blue, white, red for a 3/4, and shave 2 mana off of the activated ability to leave us with a card that is only okay, something terrible has happened. I don't know if they were trying to play it safe in the design of this card, and they thought maybe this text box could be abused somehow. Clearly, this exact card just ended up falling way too hard. Like, I think we could make it a 3 mana 3/4 flyer with a 4 mana activated ability, and I still don't think that many people would play it. But Jeskai tokens is kind of a cool little strategy to go into, so it's just a huge bummer.
If you shaved off 2 mana off the ability and the cost, I think maybe we'd even get to 4 digits. However, only 486 people have Akeem decks. Why?
Yeah, it just leaves me asking why. But we'll go to another one. This is closer to the Yuriko side of things. This is Derevi, Imperial Tactician. White, blue, green for a 2/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield or a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can tap or untap target permanent. And you can pay, for some reason, 1 green, blue, white to just put Derevi onto the battlefield from your command zone. It isn't cast, so it is not counterable. It just sort of goes from here to here. And it, of course, negates all commander attacks because I'm going to pay 3 mana for the first Revi, but after that, why would I ever cast it again?
I mean, Tail's End could definitely counter that, but that's not the point of this video. The point is that it kind of goes against the spirit of Commander to not have Commander tax on things, or to just cheat out the effect of your creature into play. So when you can do that, it just makes for like a combo. It's very easy to combo with Derevi, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's pretty unstoppable when it's just stapled onto an ability.
Yeah, I mean, you can have powerful commanders, but I just think that the way this card was made is just fundamentally broken. It goes against the idea of Commander that you pay incremental amounts of mana that get more and more over the course of the game because you want to keep casting your Commander, which you have access to already. This one's just like, nah, just put it out. I don't know. Make it instant speed too. Just put it out. It's very, very weird, although in their defense, this was in the first, line of new commanders designed specifically for the format. I'm sure they were looking to shake up the rules and how you think about commanders, and I just think this was the wrong way to go about it. And we know that because no other commander since this has just had a put me into play from the command zone ability.
It's very powerful, but in terms of design, I think it falls on the lower side.
Yeah, we don't ever need to go back to pay 4 mana, put your commander out for free. We don't need to do that.
Next is something that BZ personally has beef with. It's Bill Fernie Bree Swindler. 1 in a blue for a 2/1. Whenever he becomes blocked, you choose one. You either create a treasure token or target opponent gains control of target horse you control. If they do, remove it from combat and create 3 treasure tokens. Care to explain to the fine viewers at home?
This card makes me so mad. This card makes me unreasonably mad. I think it's a terrible design because I don't even... Let's set the stage, right? It's a 2 mana uncommon from Lord of the Rings. So it's not even necessarily designed for Commander. And I can totally live with that. That's not even my gripe with this card. My gripe with this card is that it is useless. It is straight up useless. So let's take it to the environment it's supposed to be in. It's presumably supposed to be for like... Lord of the Rings Limited, where it's an uncommon. So what mostly happens is when it's blocked, you get a treasure token. But they wanted to put that horse thing in for flavor because I guess he like scams you out of a horse or something. And so like they made the ability so unbelievably impossible to ever trigger. There's only 2 horses in the whole set, and one of them's white and one of them's red-white. So that kind of just makes it seem that this card just reads like a joke, where you're supposed to just read the second line and go, huh, that's funny, and then never trigger it or care about it. I don't think that Magic cards are designed that way, where you're supposed to read the rules text and laugh at it and then never trigger the rules text or even be capable of doing that. I'm like baffled by this. But we could also see like another example of a comedy thing that they put on cards is we can look at Shadowfax, because Shadowfax's thing is, I think Gandalf or whoever's like, Shadowfax, like show them the meaning of haste, right? And so the card Shadowfax has haste, and they put the reminder text for haste. It shows you the meaning of haste on the card. That's hilarious. The haste is relevant on the card, and it factors in. It's not just a joke for no reason. So as a result, I just kind of hate Bill Fenry. I think this design is awful, and I don't think it's doable. They could have just made some kind of horse thing that is doable, but this is just not it.
I would have rather him come in with like a 0/1 horse, like they have Woe Strider come in with a 0/1 goat. That would make a little more sense than you go, whoop, like I guess you can have it. But yeah, this is also, he's a 2/1, so when he becomes blocked, isn't he just gonna basically die most of the time?
To create a treasure token, yeah, he's basically just gonna trade off and die. When you hit a player, you don't get anything. Just a terrible card. I know you guys forgot about this card, but I had to rant about it for a little bit. But we're going to go to the next one. What do we got, Mia?
We've got Odric Blood Cursed. 1 red-white for a 3/3. When he ETBs, you create X blood tokens. X is the number of abilities from Monk: Flying, First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigi, found among creatures you control. So you need to do a lot of work just to get a few blood tokens. This is bad.
This card is one of the most disappointing legendary creatures they have ever made. It's not the most disappointing, because I think that one's coming a little bit later, but it is on the list. 3 mana 3/3. That's what this card actually is. And people were like, people love Odric. Odric has 2 really cool, really useful cards in the past, and we're like, oh my god, Odric's back. But he's a vampire.
Yeah.
He got turned. He's like Blade now. He's a vampire that like hunts vampires and like kills evil things. What does he do?
Make blood tokens.
Makes a few bloods. If you play like a Sarah Ascendant, you get a flying lifelinker. That's pretty cool. Here's 2 blood. Here's 2 bloods.
That's so sad. Yeah, as a human, super cool. Definitely had a lot of good cards. And then he comes out as a vampire, and he becomes infinitely worse. It's like, did the sun just nuke you, my dude?
Did it just make you lame? Like, they could have maybe put...
You know, they usually make vampires cool, right?
Like, it needed... If it's going to have this lengthy, useless top text, it needed bottom text of, like, whenever you discard a card, put, like, 2 counters on him or something. Or maybe he gains these abilities somehow. But, like, oh my god... This was a complete, I'll say it, it was a wet fart of a commander.
You talk about farts a lot, but I'm really sad to see this because it's like, this is just what makes people think that Boros is bad. I love Boros and I love Mardu and that whole like kind of circle of commanders. This is sad. And if someone played this in front of me, I would be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe Boros is bad.
I would give them a hug.
The next card is not just one card, but it's a whole cycle of cards. It's every card that has eminence. But specifically, we're going to be talking about Aloro, Ageless Ascetic, to kind of like set the stage for eminence. This is a 3 white, blue, and black commander for a 4/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 2 life. Whenever you gain life, you could pay 1. If you do, draw a card and each opponent loses 1 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, if it is in the command zone, you gain 2 life. This is the type of deal where it doesn't matter if your commander is on the battlefield or in the command zone, you're going to get the effect. So you're only not going to get the effect if it somehow stays in the graveyard, stays in exile, or is locked down with like Kenrith's transformation or something.
Right, yeah. And you really have a lot of control over whether it goes to the graveyard or not. So it's mostly just going to go back to the command zone whenever it dies. But Kenny's Tea is the way to do it. But yeah, this was an interesting card because I don't think Aloro is broken. I think this ability is fine. But it just sits really sour with people when your commander gets to do something that theirs can't. And it was like, especially when Alora came out, because it was in like the first wave of commanders, and everyone else is like, I had to build this deck from like 2 strings of tape and some glue and some duct tape out of standard sets that they didn't care about commander for 10 years, and you just get this, which just says as long as you play the game, you start at basically like 60 life. People were not happy with this. This was not a good idea.
It doesn't feel good, and then it really leads to play patterns where your commander doesn't really do anything except exist at the helm of your deck. I have an Edgar deck, and a lot of times I don't bring him out until it's time to deliver the final blow because he's going to put counters on all of my team, but it's going to be a lot safer if he stays in the command zone and I'm just making vampires left and right, and that's a lot of mana to pour into him when I could be using that on other vampires and still getting the same effect.
Yeah, they brought in some, they wanted to go back to Eminence for some reason. I can't hate on it too much, but I think it was a complete mistake, especially when we had an example of Aloro. I remember distinctly when this card came out, and the year or 2 after, it was the most hated commander, period. It was number 1. So I'm not sure what made them want to go back in full force with cats, dragons, wizards, and vampires. I think kind of all of those were also mistakes. And then we got the most fair version in Sidar Jabari, which just kind of loots. But even still, that's the most fair Eminence we've got, maybe the cat one. But it's like you still don't have to play any discard or mill effects because you have guaranteed draw discard to fuel the graveyard ability. I just think Eminence is a complete, like, as far as commander mechanics goes, it's a complete joke. You can't give people incentive to not cast their commander. It's just not even good game design, I think. Why would you want to encourage people not to play their commander?
It's kind of just like you have an emblem stapled onto you and you go, okay, that's really cool. Anyways, I'll use my mana for other stuff while you guys have to, fight for your commanders.
Yeah.
It's just like, it definitely goes against the spirit of Commander. I definitely understand where people are coming from when they don't like Eminence.
Not a feel-good mechanic either, yeah. But Moxville.com, I would say, is probably the solution to all the problems we've mentioned, because if you've got any commanders, you've got, oh man, Buzzy, I've got an Akeem deck. Well, you can actually go to Moxfield, submit the entire deck, and then take it apart. Moxfield makes all of this very easy.
Say you have a Carador deck, for instance, like Beezy does,
oh, yeah.
and you scroll down and you go, want to see any other Carador decks that people have built? If you're Buzzy, you can find 6 of your own in that suggestion, but if you play any other commander and you're anyone other than Buzzy, you could probably find multiple people's and their brewers on Moxfield decks that you can just click on to get some inspiration.
Truly an amazing website. I mean, it does all that and a bag of chips. Next commander, Mia, we've got Chulane, Teller of Tales. 2 white, blue, green for a 2/4 vigilance. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, and you can pay 3 and tap it to return target creature you control to its owner's hand. I think Chulane is just sort of like the epitome of boring, pushed commander design where, like, me personally, I have no desire to build this or to see it or to play with it or to play against it because it just doesn't do anything interesting. It gives you everything. So it's like whenever you cast a creature spell, not only do you draw a card, you also get to put a land out, but it's not tapped, it's untapped. So you can just keep going, spin the wheels, draw infinite cards, get all this value forever for free. You don't pay anything into this. It's just a static ability. And then he also has a little bit of enabler on him where you can bounce one of your own creatures to like save it or to just play it again. So it's enabler plus payoff. And that to me is like some of the lamest design that goes on commanders. And for some reason, he can bounce himself. So he has like pseudo not as much commander tax. I don't like that either.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of commanders that fall into this category of like, what does it do? Well, you don't really have to build it to do anything. It's just good, right? No matter how you build it. It's like, ooh, your opponents are doing things? Sure, let's do that. It's like, oh, you want to play creatures? Let's give you value. I definitely like you definitely hit the nail on the head where it's like, this doesn't really ask much of you.
No, it's not like I'm mad or salty of losing to Tulane. I really haven't played against Tulane too much, if ever. I'm trying to think, maybe once or twice, but I just don't like the design of this card. That's what we're talking about. I don't think this design is very good. You don't want to just give everyone everything they could ever want up front. I would like to build around it and say, well, how can I make this great? And this one is just put creatures that cost 1 in your deck.
It's also really repeatable, not only with his effect, but the fact that you do have him in the command zone. I see him being a little bit more like palatable in the 99 because it's a little bit harder to recur him. But in the command zone where you have like access to him at all points, it could get a little stale, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of a 99 card because then it's just like another good card among many. But you got beef with this next commander, so I'll let you do it.
I am so sick of Joda the Unifier. Wooburg for a 5/5. Legendary creatures you control get +X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top until you hit a legendary non-land card with less mana value. You cast it for free, and you put the rest on the bottom. I'm sick of this card. He comes down as a 6/6. Don't let the 5/5 fool you. He counts himself. And then you just get free Cascade for your legendaries. Well, a lot of good stuff is legendary. This is another good stuff deck, only you can play any good stuff in all of Commander because he's Wooburg. And this is, I'm bored. I'm bored of seeing this in Cube. I'm bored of seeing this in Commander. I don't want to see this in general. You just get free pumps. He's also a Voltron commander if you really wanted, because he can easily be, in hitting range for commander damage because he gets so big. You just have a couple very low cost, you have your Skrells of the world and stuff. They come down really quick and he's like a 10/10 immediately. I hate this card.
Yeah, my biggest gripe with this card, I think you summed up a lot of what I wanted to say. My biggest problem with this card is kind of just that they don't make creatures like this, because why does Joda count himself? Like, the 5/5 on Joda is basically a lie. Like you said, he's never a 5/5. Joda cannot be a 5/5 in play. I don't know why it doesn't say other legendary creatures you control, or legendary creatures get +X, where X is the number of other legendary creatures you control. They just don't template cards this way. So I don't know why they kind of like missed that. Maybe they were just pushing this for some kind of standard thing, and then that made it so that in Commander it's kind of like busted and annoying. At least he has Commander tax, I guess.
I'm salty about this. Don't give free Cascade to your legendary spells and then just also pump every legendary. You know what? I hate this card. There, I said it.
All right, we'll cool down a little bit. No, Joda can't hurt us anymore. We're gonna go to
Yes,
Nils.
he can.
We're gonna go to Nils, Discipline Enforcer. Just a completely boring palette cleanser to save you. 2 and a white for its U2. At the beginning of your end step, for each player, put a +1/+1 counter on up to one target creature that player controls. Each creature with one or more counters on it cannot attack you or planeswalkers you control unless its controller pays X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. Nils is going for this kind of like ghostly prison, pillow fort style, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I don't think ghostly prison things are very good. So what I would have wanted on this card, because everyone who's watching goes, oh yeah, Nils, I forgot about that, because it's garbage. What it really needed to do is put counters on creatures more reliably, but like putting a +1/+1 counter on your creature, making it bigger and better, isn't worth you having the option to pay 1 mana to attack me. And that's always what it is, because you're only ever putting counters on one at a time. If Nils could have some kind of crazy ramp up potential to put like multiples on, or you pay X to put X things on, and now they can't pay X, we've got a stew going. But this is just like, it feels like there's no text on this card. It feels like it doesn't even do anything.
I have this in my Baloth Noble Heritage deck, which revolves around people taking counters to make their stuff not goated, and then this is in the 99 of that, and it's still disappointing. Even when I'm putting on multiple counters on a bunch of other people's stuff with things like Agitator Ant and, the Noble Heritage type deal, this is still bad in there because either people will just get rid of him and then just attack me with bigger creatures. Like, this isn't good. I hate the fact that no matter where it is, you're either putting counters on stuff really slowly and then they only have to pay 1 mana, or it's just this goes away and then everyone else just has bigger creatures that just attack you at that point.
Yeah, the rate is just abysmal. There's no, I don't know why anyone would look at this and go like, oh, my spark just went off here. I know what to do with this. I'm going to play it. And I'm going to make them pay 1 mana.
And let me make things real spicy. I'm going to put Ghostly Prison in this deck.
But and also I'm a little frustrated by what we get out of it. Because what I get out of it is 1+1/+1 counter. I get a little bit of extra, but if Nils goes away, I'm only up, however many turns he stayed out, I'm up that many +1/+1 counters? I guess.
It's very underwhelming for a commander. Commanders are supposed to be big, splashy, and have really cool themes around them, and this is not any of those things. This is sad even in the 99.
Maybe they were barking up the wrong tree to begin with, because Pillow Fort, when done very well, can be frustrating. So then I would say, take it back to the drawing board and just don't make a Pillow Fort commander if you're going to be forced to make it terrible.
Next is another Beezy special. He really hates this card. It's Cadibri of Mithril Hall, green and white for a 2/2, first strike, reach. When it attacks, you put a 1/1 counter for each equipment attached to it. And if you pay 1 and remove all the counters on it, it deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of counters removed this way.
The first thing I gotta highlight is the very bizarre first strike and reach combo of abilities. Those abilities don't really go together. And if you search first strike and reach on creatures, there's only 4 other ones. 3 of them are so old that they don't even have reach keyworded. And the other one is Halana and Elena, which sort of makes sense because that's not a creature that really wants to attack. But this creature specifically wants to attack. So the reach is irrelevant if you're attacking. So what is the reach only good for the first turn? And then after that, you're just like, whatever, I don't care. So bizarre. I mean, it's an archer, but not every archer needs reach. Or maybe make this so that it can block. Maybe a creature that wants to block, because you're incentivizing it to attack. You have to put a bunch of equipment on it. And then the last ability's got 3 things wrong with it too, at least if you're asking me, which you are. You have to remove all the counters. You can only ever do it once. No matter how many +1/+1 counters you put on, no matter how hard you work to build it up, you can only remove all of them. You can't remove X of them. You can't split it up. And this is a face-up on board card that says, if you attack or block, I can deal damage to it. So it's known information. So it just means that if you have 5 counters on Cadibri and I have a 5/5 flyer, I'm just not going to attack with it. So this doesn't create interesting game states. It doesn't even really create a game state where you can kill my 5/5 flyer. I'm just not going to attack with it. It just creates one where it goes, I guess not that much is happening right now.
It's just so sad too, because it's not surprising. It's just, I don't know. I really hate the only attacking or blocking clauses. I think that's so just situational and boring. That's why I'm not a big fan of the Channelland Iganjo. I think it's just so situational. And then stapling that onto a commander is well, you guys better attack or block, which is usually not in the Selesnya wheelhouse. So.
I gotta remove all the counters. So even if I'm trying to give this best case scenario lifelink and death touch, it's a known information. So if a Cadibri attacks, it's going to get chump blocked or something. It's not going to be blocked by a big thing because it's already got, let's say lifelink and death touch. And so then I have to wait until it's just some random thing attacks, but then you reset it back to the beginning when you activate it. Oh man, this card, I hate it. I hate it so much. I think some people might be going, BZU hates some really weird cards. I think I've made a pretty good case for it, but Mia is going to drop a card that I think a lot of people don't like.
It's the Combo King Corvold, Fakehurst King, 2 black, green, and red for a 4/4 flyer. When it ETBs or attacks, sack another permanent. When you sack a permanent, put a 1/1 counter on him and draw a card. There are so many permanents that are so easy to sack, like your treasures, your clues, your whatever, things you make for free, and then you're just getting free cards out of it, and you make him giant. This is so easy to trigger.
I think the mistake in this commander's design it goes back to Chuling, because they're from that same product, and it's the enabler plus the payoff. This card is very strong. This card would be very strong if it just said, whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Corvold and draw a card. That's a full Magic card. But they gave you like the easiest little we wouldn't want you to have your commander remove without you drawing at least one card. So when it enters, you can just sack another permanent for no reason if to just trigger Corvold. I just hate that design. And I know that they've gone back to this type of thing a ton, but I think that speaks to just like how uninteresting it is of just give me everything up front. Don't make me work for it. You can't it's okay to put a strong line of text on a card and not pay it off immediately.
I have a little bit of beef with this card because I play an Atraxa deck, right? And so people are always like, it makes the joke like, is it that type of Atraxa deck? And I'll tell you straight up, like, yeah, it's that Atraxa deck. People are like, it's not that type of Corvold deck. Why isn't that the standard? It's always that type of Corvold deck.
It always is.
At least with Atraxa, you can do weird stuff. There's energy counters nowadays. There's shield counters or whatever. It probably won't be, but with Corvold, what do you do? You're always doing the thing. You don't have a choice.
In this deck, I'm actually trying to sacrifice permanents.
And draw cards.
Oh, yeah. So that's, you know what? Maybe we'll switch it over. We'll switch the meme over. But we do have what I consider to be the biggest disappointment ever put on a legendary creature. We're going to set the stage. I'm going to take you back. Innistrad just came out. Holy crap. This set is awesome. Everyone loves Innistrad. It's one of the most beloved sets of all time. And then as we chug along through Magic's history, we start getting to the point where everyone's got commander decks now, and people are trying to build on some of their favorite creature types. People love werewolves. But the problem that they've had is that there's no werewolf commander. They've made this very abundantly clear that they want a werewolf commander. Shadows over Innistrad comes out. Great. We don't get one. Next set, Eldritch Moon. We get Ulrich of the Kralin Horde, 3 green-red for a 4/4. When this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Ulrich, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast this turn, transform Ulrich of the Kralin Horde. Okay, maybe this werewolf commander cares about werewolves on the backside. He transforms into Ulrich, uncontested alpha, 6/6. When this creature transforms into Ulrich, you may have it fight target non-werewolf creature you don't control. At the beginning of each upkeep, if player casts 2 or more spells, transform Ulrich. So we get a legendary, mythic rare werewolf, not pushed enough to see any competitive play whatsoever. This card was maybe in one deck as a one-of one time, but really nothing there. This doesn't care about werewolves at all. And in fact, it says non-werewolf on the back if you really want to get technical with it. What? They dropped the ball so hard. Everyone was dying for it. And the worst part is we kind of know that they can't print double-sided cards in precons, so there wasn't going to be a werewolf precon. And everybody who saw this and just was disappointed by it then had to wait for the next time we went to Innistrad to get a playable werewolf commander that cared in Tovolar.
This is just really sad. Maybe we don't like it because we're not part of that alpha grind set, but I think that we could have just done it a lot easier by doing something like stabling it onto Arling Corridor, Just making one of those like this can be your commander type deal. I feel like that would have been more fitting than this, which is just, I guess it transforms.
Like +4/+4, and then it fights? Those are the most boring generic abilities. If it said when a werewolf enters the battlefield, you may pay 65 mana if you do Scry 1, people would have been happy, and you put nothing to do with werewolves at all on this card. And I don't understand, why couldn't we have just, for whatever reason, this is somebody at R&D's baby. They need this card to be printed exactly this way. Could we not just make another one at Rare that's just like, hey, your werewolves can't transform and they get +1/+1 and this is a legendary creature? Like, No, we couldn't, apparently.
That would just be too easy. The werewolf players need to just have more fun for a little while longer.
They need to suffer. Let's move on to another, honestly, very disappointing commander who's actually only has 103 decks because he's just so unusable. This is Munda, Ambush Leader, 2 red, white for a 3/4 haste. Now, this ability is almost perfect, but they drop the ball right at the end. Whenever Munda, Ambush Leader, or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you can look at the top 4 cards of your library. If you do, reveal any number of ally cards from among them and put those cards on top of your library in any order and the rest on the bottom in any order. This goes from what everybody would expect it to do, which is put one of them into your hand, for God's sakes, and it turns this into, frankly, an unusable card.
No, it's okay. You understand. I'm going to go, hey, did you know I have 2 allies? And I'm going to put 2 non-allies at the bottom, switch them up a little, and go, you can't guess, and then put them back on my library. I'm going to draw an ally next turn. It's
so
super cool.
Unbelievably frustrating what this card does, because you're playing allies, right? Allies want to make more allies enter. As you play more allies, your allies get better. So you play Munda, you get the trigger. Okay, great. There's like now 2 allies on top of your deck. You play another ally? You're just rearranging the top cards of your deck. You can't get any advantage out of it. At least the other ones are like, my creatures get +2/+1. I get to gain some life. They get some kind of ability. Oh my God. Munda just, he had the ball. He had it. We were like, oh, red, white allies. And then he fumbles it so hard that I hate him.
He's the commander of 103 decks, and it's really easy to see why. I don't love allies to begin with. I don't think they have as much support as they really need to be, like, competitively good. I don't even mean CEDH. I just mean, like, able to hang with normal decks.
This is why.
But
this type of attitude.
This mentality is why.
This is the Munda mentality. Don't have a Munda mentality. You should really have more of a Turgid mentality, although maybe that's a little toxic as well. This is a 3 black, 4/5 menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent, you just get it. And then it's also a lantern, but nobody really cares about that. Turgid is famously one of the most hated commander designs of all time because it promotes this gameplay where if I untap with Turgid, I'm just going to win.
It's a spicy card, and it prevents people from playing, so you either have a Turgid deck and it's kill that person first because they're going to be the biggest threat, or you don't get to play, and that kind of goes against the spirit of Commander. It's one of the big bad boogeymans of Commander in general, and for good reason.
Yeah, this design sort of hits all the modes. It's not very disappointing because this card doesn't disappoint. It destroys you, but it certainly, I think, goes against the nature of Commander being a 4-player format where everybody kind of wants the same balance of resources, and it just takes that concept and it just smashes it. I don't really have a personal vendetta against Turgid like I do with like Bill Fenry or Cadibri, but it is undeniably pretty silly.
We have a friend who plays the Turgid deck, completely understandable, but I do get why people might have a grudge against this. And also, no one's ever using the back of this. We all know that.
Yeah, no one's using Turgid's Lantern. It's fine. I want to know what your hated commanders are. Let us know what your most hated commanders are, and we'll direct you to this video, which I think you should click on actually just right now.